Ricardo Warren parked his imported car in the mansion's garage and sighed deeply. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. The business trip to Dubai had been cut short when the investor cancelled the meeting at the last minute. Now, at 9 o'clock at night, all he wanted was a hot shower and his bed. The 45-year-old businessman, owner of one of the largest real estate development firms in the country, rarely came home this early. In fact, he was rarely home at all. As he entered, he noticed the unusual silence. Where was Veronica, his current girlfriend? Probably at some charity gala spending his money, he thought bitterly. And Sophia, his 6-year-old daughter. She should be asleep under the care of some babysitter hastily hired by Veronica. Ricardo climbed the stairs toward his daughter's room, just to confirm everything was all right before turning in. That's when he heard it. A soft, melodious voice singing a lullaby he didn't recognize. He stopped in the hallway, confused. It wasn't Veronica's voice, nor that of any nanny he could recall. He quietly approached the half-open door to Sophia's room. What he saw made his heart ache in a way it hadn't in years. His daughter was nestled in the arms of a young woman he recognized as Louisa, the new cleaner hired a few weeks ago. The young woman with curly hair and warm, olive skin sang softly as she stroked the hair of the little girl, who was fighting sleep with her eyes nearly closed. "Tell me one more story, Lou. Please," Sophia murmured in a sleepy voice. "It's already late, Princess. Veronica will be home soon, and she won't like seeing you awake." Louisa answered with affection, but also firmness. "Veronica never comes to say goodnight to me anyway," the little girl said with a sadness that struck Ricardo's heart like an arrow. "And Daddy is always traveling." Ricardo felt a lump in his throat. It was true. Since the death of his wife, Beatrice, 3 years ago, he had buried himself in work, leaving Sophia's upbringing in the hands of nannies and, more recently, Veronica, with whom he'd started a relationship a year ago. "Your father works so hard because he loves you and wants to give you the very best," Louisa replied gently. "I'm sure if he could, he would be here every single night." Ricardo swallowed hard. This stranger was defending his absence to his daughter, while he himself didn't have the courage to face the truth. He was failing as a father. "Do you really think so, Lou?" Sophia asked, a thread of hope in her voice. "I'm sure of it, my love. Now close those little eyes. I'll stay here until you fall asleep." Ricardo watched, paralyzed, as Louisa began to sing again. Sophia snuggled closer, her little eyes finally shutting. The scene was one of intimacy and warmth that he hadn't provided for his daughter in a very long time. Without making a sound, he backed away from the door, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Who really was this Louisa? Why was a cleaner putting his daughter to bed? And why, for God's sake, did he feel a mixture of gratitude and jealousy seeing the affection she showed Sophia? He went downstairs and straight to his office. Pouring himself a generous glass of whiskey, he needed to think. The image of Louisa singing to his daughter wouldn't leave his mind. There was something about her, a purity, a genuine kindness that intrigued him and, at the same time, made him feel even more guilty for his absence in Sophia's life. Half an hour later, he heard light footsteps descending the stairs. He left his office just in time to see Louisa grabbing her simple handbag, ready to leave. She froze when she saw him. "Mr. Warren, I didn't know you were coming back today," she said, visibly nervous. "I'm sorry. I was just—" Sophia was alone, and she asked me to stay with her until she fell asleep. "Ms. Veronica went out and—" "How long have you been doing this?" Ricardo asked, his voice softer than he intended. Louisa hesitated, biting her lower lip. "Ever since I started working here, Sophia is afraid of sleeping alone, and since I'm usually the last one to leave." What else did Ricardo not know about his own daughter? What other fears and needs of hers was he ignoring while building his empire? "Thank you," he said finally, surprising both himself and Louisa, "for taking care of her." Louisa's brown eyes widened in surprise, and then she smiled shyly. It was like the sun had just risen, illuminating the entire room. Ricardo felt a strange warmth in his chest, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. "It's my pleasure, sir. Sophia is a wonderful child." At that instant, the front door burst open. Veronica entered, stunning in her party dress, but with her face twisted in a look of displeasure upon seeing Louisa still there. "What is that little cleaning girl still doing here at this hour?" she asked with disdain, before even noticing Ricardo. When she saw him, her tone changed instantly. "Ricardo, darling, I didn't know you were back." But Ricardo barely heard Veronica's syrupy words. His eyes caught the way Louisa's shoulders slumped at the aggressive tone, how her bright smile vanished, replaced by a resigned expression that suggested this kind of treatment was not new. And in that moment, something awakened within him, a curiosity, a desire to know more about this young woman who sang his daughter to sleep. And also a growing certainty that there was much about his own home and his own life that he needed to rediscover. What Ricardo didn't imagine was that this night would completely change the course of his life, and that Veronica would do anything to keep her privileged position, even if it meant destroying the only person who truly cared about Sophia. The next morning, Ricardo woke earlier than usual. The scene from the previous night still echoed in his mind. Louisa singing to Sophia, the cleaner's sincere smile, the stark contrast with Veronica's coldness. He dressed thoughtfully, opting to work from home that day, something he rarely did. He went down for breakfast and found Sophia already at the table, unenthusiastically stirring a bowl of cereal. Upon seeing him, the little girl's eyes widened in surprise. "Daddy!" "You didn't go to work?" The innocent question was like a stab to Ricardo's chest. His presence in the morning was so unusual that his own daughter found it strange. "No, princess. Today, I'm working from home." He sat beside her, noticing how small and fragile Sophia looked at the enormous dining table. "Did you sleep well?" Sophia nodded shyly. "Lou told me a beautiful story yesterday." "Lou? You call Louisa that?" Ricardo asked, pouring himself some coffee. She lets me. She's my friend." Sophia smiled, revealing a gap where a front tooth was missing. "She knows tons of stories and does different voices for each character." Ricardo watched his daughter come to life as she spoke about Louisa. When was the last time he had seen Sophia so animated? He could barely remember. "And what else do you two do together?" "Sometimes she helps me with my homework, and she braids my hair just like Mommy used to." The mention of her deceased mother made Sophia lower her eyes for a moment. Veronica never has time for that. Just then, Veronica entered the dining room, impeccably dressed even at that hour of the morning. Her high heels clicked on the marble floor. "Time for what, dear?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing," Sophia mumbled, going back to stirring her cereal listlessly. Ricardo noted the immediate shift in his daughter's behavior. From animated to withdrawn in seconds. How had he not noticed this before? "What a surprise to see you here at this hour." Veronica leaned in to kiss him, her expensive perfume filling the air. "I thought you'd be at the firm bright and early." "I decided to work from home today," Ricardo replied, observing her with new eyes. "I want to spend more time with Sophia." Something flashed in Veronica's eyes, annoyance, concern, but it was quickly replaced by another rehearsed smile. "What a lovely idea, darling. Unfortunately, I have that charity luncheon today. Remember, I simply can't miss it." Ricardo nodded, not really surprised. Veronica always had commitments that kept her away from home and from Sophia. After breakfast, while Sophia went to get ready for school, Ricardo heard footsteps in the kitchen. As he approached, he saw Louisa organizing cleaning supplies, dressed in a simple uniform, her curly hair tied in an unpretentious bun. Even so, there was a dignity in her posture, a natural beauty that required no artifice. "Good morning, Mr. Warren," she greeted, visibly surprised to see him. "Can I help you with anything?" "Good morning, Louisa." Actually, I wanted to talk to you. Ricardo leaned against the kitchen counter. How long have you been working here again? Almost 2 months, sir. And since when have you been taking care of Sophia at night? Louisa blushed slightly. Since the 3rd week. I found her crying one night, afraid to sleep alone. Miss Veronica had gone out and... She hesitated. You can tell me, Louisa. I'm not angry. The nanny who was supposed to be with her had also left. Sir, she said Ms. Veronica gave her permission, but Sophia told me later that it happens all the time. Louisa seemed genuinely concerned. I couldn't just leave her alone. A wave of anger grew inside Ricardo. Veronica was lying about Sophia's care. The nanny he paid wasn't doing her job. You did the right thing, he said finally, and I thank you for it. Louisa's shy smile lit up her face again. Sophia is a special child, sir. Very smart and sensitive. You seem to know her better than I do, Ricardo admitted, feeling the weight of his guilt. You just need time with her. Sophia talks a lot about her father, you know. She keeps all the presents you bring from your trips. This revelation hit Ricardo deeply. He had always assumed the expensive gifts he brought to compensate for his absence ended up forgotten in some corner. At that moment, Sophia appeared at the kitchen door, already dressed for school, her face lighting up when she saw Louisa. Lou, will you be here when I get back from school? I will, Princess. Today's the day to clean the windows, remember? Sophia ran to hug the cleaner, who returned the gesture naturally. Ricardo watched the scene with a lump in his throat. When was the last time Sophia had hugged him like that, so spontaneously? Time for school, Sophia, Veronica said, appearing behind them. Her gaze narrowed at the closeness between the cleaner and her stepdaughter. The driver is waiting. Sophia reluctantly pulled away from Louisa. Bye, Lou. Bye, Daddy. When Sophia left, Veronica shot a cold look at Louisa. I believe you have work to do, don't you? The windows won't clean themselves. Yes, ma'am, Louisa replied politely, turning back to her cleaning supplies. Veronica turned to Ricardo, her expression instantly softening. And I'm heading out now, darling. I have that committee meeting before the luncheon. After Veronica left, Ricardo remained in the kitchen, watching Louisa work. There was something about her simplicity and honesty that intrigued him more and more. Louisa, he called, making a sudden decision. Could you help me with something? She turned, curious. Of course, sir. I want to prepare a surprise for Sophia when she gets back from school. Something special. You seem to know her tastes better than I do. The smile Louisa gave him then was so genuine, so full of approval, that Ricardo felt something stir inside him, a feeling that had been dormant for so long he almost didn't recognize it. What Ricardo didn't notice was Veronica, who had forgotten her purse and returned silently. Standing in the hallway, she watched the interaction between her millionaire boyfriend and the simple cleaner, her green eyes darkening with rage and jealousy. This isn't over, Veronica thought, her beautiful face contorting into an expression of pure hatred. No one is taking what's mine, no one. The afternoon brought a surprising transformation to the Warren mansion. Following Louisa's suggestions, Ricardo prepared the home theater for a special screening of Sophia's favorite movies. Together, they built a blanket fort inside the room, filled it with colorful pillows, and hung fairy lights everywhere. Sophia loves these forts, Louisa explained, as she adjusted a sheet. She told me she used to make them with her mom. Ricardo stopped what he was doing, feeling the weight of that revelation. Beatrice loved these things. She always turned simple moments into something magical. His voice faltered slightly. I didn't know Sophia remembered that. Children hold on to more memories than we imagine, Louisa answered softly, especially the ones made of love. Their eyes met for a moment, and Ricardo felt a connection that went beyond words. There was a wisdom in Louisa's eyes that contrasted with her youth. How do you understand children so well, being so young? He asked, genuinely curious. Louisa smiled, a smile tinged with sadness. I grew up in an orphanage, Mr. Warren. I learned early on to take care of the younger ones, and later, well, I studied early childhood education for 2 years before I had to drop out. Why did you drop out? My grandmother got sick. She was the only family I had left. I had to work full-time to pay for her medicine. She shrugged, as if it were nothing extraordinary. One day I'll go back to school. I dream of being a teacher. Ricardo looked at her with new eyes. This young woman who cleaned his house carried interrupted dreams and a strength he rarely encountered in his social circle. The sound of the front door opening interrupted the moment. Sophia ran in, tossing her backpack on the floor of the hall. "Daddy, are you still home?" she called out, her voice a mix of surprise and hope. "I'm here, Princess," Ricardo answered, stepping out of the theater room to greet her. "And I have a surprise for you." Sophia's eyes widened as he led her to the transformed room. Seeing the illuminated fort, the girl let out a squeal of joy. "A movie fort, just like Mom used to make." She turned to Louisa, who was watching from the doorway. "Lou, did you help Daddy?" "It was all his idea," Louisa replied with a knowing smile at Ricardo. "I just gave a few pointers." Sophia hugged her father tightly, burying her little face in his expensive shirt. "Thank you, Daddy. This is the best day ever." Ricardo felt his eyes well up. How could he have become so distant from this little girl who was a part of him? How had he allowed work and the pain of loss to deprive him of these moments? "Are we watching Frozen? And then Moana? And then—" Sophia rattled on, already crawling into the fort. "All of them, if you want." Ricardo laughed, following her. He looked at Louisa, still standing in the doorway. "So aren't you joining us?" Louisa seemed surprised by the invitation. "Me? But I have to finish cleaning and—" "Please, Lou," Sophia begged. "You always sing along during the good parts." Ricardo smiled. "It's settled then. Consider it part of your job today." With a shy smile, Louisa joined them in the fort. The next few hours were filled with movies, popcorn, and the voices of Sophia and Louisa singing along to songs they both knew by heart. Ricardo watched, marveling at his daughter's transformation, from a quiet, withdrawn child to this vibrant little person full of life. At some point, while Sophia was completely engrossed in the third movie, Ricardo leaned toward Louisa. "Thank you," he whispered. "I haven't seen Sophia like this in years. She just needs your attention, Mr. Warren, to know that she's important." "Ricardo," he corrected. "You can call me Ricardo." The smile she gave him in return made his heart race in a way it hadn't since Beatrice. The moment was shattered by the sound of high heels in the hallway. Veronica appeared at the door, her face a mask of false surprise. "What an, unusual scene," she commented, her cold eyes assessing the situation. "A maid watching movies with the family. How modern of you, Ricardo." Sophia immediately shrank back, the light in her eyes visibly dimming. "Louisa helped us prepare this surprise for Sophia," Ricardo explained, bothered by the change in his daughter's demeanor. "I thought it was only fair that she participate." Of course, Veronica forced a smile. "But I'm afraid we need to discuss tomorrow's dinner with the Chinese investors. It's important, darling." Ricardo hesitated, looking at Sophia, who was now watching the movie in silence. All her previous excitement gone. "I'll go finish the windows," Louisa said quickly, getting up. "Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Warren. It was very kind." "Ricardo," he corrected again, ignoring the furious glare Veronica shot him. After Louisa left, Veronica sat beside him, far enough from Sophia not to be overheard by the girl. "What is going on here, Ricardo?" she hissed. "Since when do you treat the help like family?" "Since I realize that the help knows my daughter better than I do," he replied, keeping his voice low but firm. "And speaking of which, we need to talk about the nannies who are supposedly looking after Sophia at night." Veronica's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do, and we're going to clear this up later." Veronica stood up, adjusting her designer dress with sharp movements. "I'm going to take a shower. This conversation isn't over." When she left, Ricardo noticed Sophia watching him with attentive eyes. "Veronica doesn't like Lou," the girl said simply. "Why do you say that, princess?" Sophia shrugged, with the brutal honesty only children possess. "She says mean things to Lou when you're not here. She calls her a stuck-up little maid and says she'll be fired if she doesn't stay in her place." The revelation hit Ricardo like a punch. What other things were happening in his own house without his knowledge? Outside the room, in the hallway, Luisa was organizing her cleaning supplies when Veronica confronted her, her face contorted with rage. "Listen to me, you little opportunist," Veronica whispered, grabbing Luisa's arm forcefully. "I don't know what game you're playing, getting close to Ricardo and the girl, but it ends now." "I'm not playing any game, Mom," Luisa replied, trying to pull free. "I'm just doing my job. Your job is to clean, not to meddle in my family." Veronica squeezed her arm tighter. "Stay away from Ricardo, do you understand? Or I will make sure you never find another job in this city." What neither of them realized was that Ricardo, concerned by how long Luisa was taking, had come looking for her. Standing around the bend in the hallway, he heard every word of Veronica's threat, and his blood boiled. In that moment, watching the fear in Luisa's eyes and the cruelty in Veronica's, Ricardo knew his life was about to change drastically, and that he would need to protect not only his daughter, but also the young woman who, in just one day, had shown him how empty his house and his heart truly were. "Veronica!" Ricardo's voice cut through the air like a blade of ice. "Let her go, now!" Veronica dropped Luisa's arm immediately, spinning on her heels with a look of rehearsed innocence. "Ricardo, I was just explaining to Luisa that she needs to finish the windows before she leaves. Weren't we, dear?" Her tone was sweet, but her eyes conveyed a silent threat to the cleaner. Luisa rubbed her arm where Veronica's fingers had left red marks. Her eyes met Ricardo's, a mixture of fear and relief. "Don't lie to me," Ricardo said, his voice dangerously calm. "I heard everything, the threats, the way you referred to my family as your family." Veronica's smile faltered. "You're overreacting, darling. It was just a misunderstanding." "Luisa," Ricardo turned to the young woman, ignoring Veronica. "Are you okay?" "Yes, sir," she answered, though her voice trembled slightly. "Please, go back to Sophia. Tell her I'll be there in a few minutes." Luisa hesitated, looking from Ricardo to Veronica, clearly worried about leaving them alone. "It's all right," Ricardo assured her. "Please." After Luisa walked away, Ricardo faced Veronica. For the first time, he truly saw her, not the beautiful woman he paraded at events, but someone calculating and cruel. "It's over, Veronica." "What?" She laughed, incredulous. "You're breaking up with me over a little maid. Are you insane?" "No. I'm finally seeing clearly. You lied about taking care of Sophia. You threatened an employee. And from what I understand, this isn't the first time." Veronica switched tactics, her eyes filling with rehearsed tears. "Ricardo, I love you. Everything I do is for us, for our family. This girl is manipulating you, can't you see? She wants your money. She wants to take my place." "What place, Veronica? You never wanted to be a mother to Sophia. You never really wanted to be here. You just wanted the status, the credit cards, the parties." "That's not fair," she protested, the victim mask slipping to reveal her rage. "I put up with your bratty daughter for a whole year. I deserve more consideration." "Put up with," Ricardo repeated, his voice rising dangerously. "Sophia is not a burden to be put up with. She is my daughter, and you—" He shook his head. "Disgusted. I want you out of my house by tomorrow." Veronica's face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. "You'll regret this, Ricardo. No one discards me like this. My mind is made up, and if you threaten Luisa again or try to harm Sophia in any way, You will discover that I can be far more ruthless in business than you can imagine." He turned to leave, but Veronica grabbed his arm. "It's because of her, isn't it? That two-bit cleaner. You barely know her." Ricardo pulled away. "This has nothing to do with Luisa. It has to do with Sophia, with me, and with the kind of environment I want in my home." He faced her one last time. "Tomorrow, when I get back from the office, I don't want to find a single trace of you here." Leaving Veronica paralyzed with rage in the hallway, Ricardo returned to the theater room. He found Sophia asleep in the blanket fort, her head resting in Luisa's lap, who was stroking her hair absent-mindedly as the movie played on. The scene was so peaceful, so natural, that Ricardo felt a lump in his throat. This is how it should be. His daughter safe, protected, loved. "She fell asleep right after I came back," Luisa whispered. "I think the day's excitement wore her out." Ricardo sat beside them, watching his daughter's serene face. "Thank you for taking care of her. For really taking care of her." Luisa smiled shyly. "And you don't have to thank me. Sophia is special. Did you hear?" He didn't need to finish the question. "A little," she admitted, lowering her eyes. "I'm so sorry if I caused any trouble. I can look for another job, if that would be better for you." "No," Ricardo answered quickly, perhaps too quickly. "You didn't cause any trouble. In fact," he hesitated, gathering his thoughts, "I have a proposal for you." Luisa looked at him with curiosity. "Sophia needs someone who truly cares about her, someone she trusts. I'd like you to be her full-time governess." Luisa's eyes widened. "Governess? But I haven't finished my degree. I don't have the formal qualifications to—" "You have what matters most. Sophia trusts you, and so do I." Ricardo smiled. "The salary would be much better, of course. And if you want to resume your studies, I can help with that too." Luisa seemed speechless, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Sophia murmured sleepily, opening her eyes. Apparently, the little girl wasn't as asleep as she seemed. "Please, Lou, stay with us." Luisa laughed, wiping away a tear that escaped. "How can I say no to that?" The smile that lit up Sophia's face was worth more than any words. The girl sat up, hugging Luisa tightly, then reached out an arm to include her father in the hug. For a moment, the three of them stayed like that, connected. Ricardo felt something he hadn't experienced since Beatrice's death, the feeling of being home, truly home. What none of them knew was that, outside, Veronica watched the scene, her beautiful face distorted by hatred. In her mind, plans were already forming. Plans to destroy the nascent happiness she witnessed, to reclaim what she considered hers by right. "Enjoy it while you can, little maid," she thought. Her fingers clenching her phone so tightly, her knuckles turned white. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. That same night, while the mansion finally slept in peace, Veronica made a call to an old friend, a private investigator of dubious reputation who had helped her before. "I want everything on her," she ordered, her voice laced with venom. "Every secret, every mistake, every skeleton in the closet. This Luisa has no idea who she's messing with." On the other end of the line, the man chuckled. "Consider it done, darling. Nobody has a completely clean past." Veronica hung up with a cruel smile. The war was just beginning, and she had no intention of losing. The following days brought a remarkable transformation to the Warren mansion. With Veronica's stormy departure, which wasn't without her breaking a few expensive items and screaming threats, the house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as if a weight had been lifted. Luisa took on her new role with a mix of enthusiasm and shyness. No longer in a cleaner's uniform, but in simple, comfortable clothes, she established a routine for Sophia that included studying, playing, and, to the girl's delight, many stories. Ricardo, for his part, reorganized his work schedule. For the first time in years, he started coming home in time for dinner with his daughter. Friday nights were officially declared family movie night, complete with the blanket fort that was now a permanent fixture in the theater room. On one of these nights, as Sophia slept between them after a Disney movie marathon, Ricardo turned to Louisa. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked, confused. "For bringing life back into this house, for helping me rediscover my daughter." He hesitated, his eyes meeting hers in the soft glow of the fairy lights. "For reminding me that there's more to life than contracts and meetings." Louisa blushed, looking away. "I'm just doing my job." "We both know it's much more than that." Ricardo lightly touched her hand, a simple gesture that sent an electric current up Louisa's arm. "You genuinely care. That's rare, Louisa. Rarer than you can imagine in my world." The moment was interrupted by Sophia, who stirred in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. They both smiled, the spell broken, but something had shifted between them. An invisible line had been crossed. The next morning, during breakfast, the doorbell rang. Carmen, the head housekeeper who now worked in harmony with Louisa, answered the door and returned with a worried expression. "Mr. Warren." "It's the police." Ricardo frowned, confused. "The police? What do they want?" Two officers entered the dining room, their faces serious. "Mr. Ricardo Warren, we have a warrant to question a Ms. Louisa Oliveira." Louisa, who was pouring juice for Sophia, froze. "Me? But why?" "We received an anonymous tip regarding the misappropriation of jewelry at this residence," the older officer explained, looking directly at Louisa. "Do the caller claims to have proof that you have been stealing valuable items." "That's absurd," Ricardo exclaimed, standing up. "Louisa has my complete trust. Who made this accusation?" "We can't disclose that, sir, but we have a warrant to search Miss Oliveira's belongings." Sophia, frightened by the situation, grabbed Louisa's hand. "Lou doesn't steal. She's good." Louisa was pale, but she maintained her composure. "You can search whatever you like. I have nothing to hide." Ricardo placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "I'm calling my lawyer immediately. This is clearly an attempt at slander." The officers followed Louisa to her room, a simple space that was once reserved for guests. They began to methodically search her few possessions, modest clothes, a few books, an old laptop. "There's nothing here," the younger officer said after a few minutes. That's when the older one opened a small wooden box on the nightstand. His expression changed. "What's this?" He held up a pair of diamond earrings that Ricardo recognized immediately. They had belonged to Beatrice, his late wife. They were valuable pieces, kept in his personal safe. "Those aren't mine!" Louisa exclaimed, genuinely shocked. "I've never seen those earrings in my life." "These are the earrings described in the tip," the officer said, placing them in a plastic bag. "Ms. Oliveira, I'm afraid you'll have to come with us to the station for questioning." "This is ridiculous," intervened Ricardo, who was watching from the door. "Those earrings were in my personal safe. Someone planted them there to frame Louisa. I'm sorry, Mr. Warren, but we have to follow protocol," the officer replied. "If you'd like to make a statement, you can accompany us." Louisa was in shock, silent tears streaming down her face. "Ricardo, I swear I didn't take anything. I would never—" "I know," he replied, holding her hands. "Don't worry, I'll fix this." Sophia, who had slipped past Carmen's watch, appeared in the hallway, seeing Louisa being led away by the officers. "Lou, where are they taking her? Daddy, make them stop!" The desperation in his daughter's voice broke Ricardo's heart. He knelt, hugging her. "It's going to be okay. A princess. It's just a misunderstanding. I'll bring Lou back, I promise." As Louisa was led away, Ricardo caught something out of the corner of his eye, a figure watching from the street, partially hidden behind a tree. Even from a distance, he recognized Veronica's satisfied smirk. In that instant, everything became clear. This was revenge. Veronica had planted the earrings to frame Louisa. "Carmen, stay with Sophia," Ricardo ordered, his voice cold with contained rage. I'm going to the station to sort this out, and then... His eyes narrowed in the direction where he had seen Veronica, but she was already gone. Then I'm going to settle the score with whoever is behind this. At the police station, Louisa sat alone in an interrogation room, trying to contain her panic. Her whole life flashed before her eyes. The orphanage, the struggle to get an education, the dream of being a teacher, her grandmother's illness. Everything she had worked so hard for could vanish because of a false accusation. Outside, Ricardo arrived accompanied by Marcus Thorne, the best criminal defense attorney in the city. I want to see the security camera footage from my house, Ricardo demanded of the detective. I'm certain it will show who really put those earrings in Luisa's room. The detective, who knew Ricardo's reputation and influence, nodded. We'll look into it. Mr. Warren, but you have to understand, we need to follow procedure. I understand perfectly, Ricardo replied. And when we prove that my ex-girlfriend planted evidence to frame an innocent person, I expect you'll follow the procedure to arrest her for filing a false police report. Meanwhile, in a cafe across town, Veronica savored her victory, typing furiously on her phone. She was sending messages to all her influential contacts, spreading rumors about the maid who seduced Ricardo Warren and got caught stealing his dead wife's jewels. What she didn't know was that her revenge was about to backfire on her in a way she could never have foreseen. 3 hours later, the situation at the police station had changed dramatically. Detective Miller, a middle-aged man with decades of police experience, watched the security footage from the Warren mansion with a grave expression. The recordings clearly showed Veronica sneaking into the house the previous night, using a key she had apparently not returned, heading to Ricardo's office and then to Louisa's room. This changes everything, the detective commented, pausing the video. We have clear evidence of breaking and entering and planting false evidence. Ricardo, who was watching the footage alongside his lawyer, felt a mixture of relief and fury. Then I want her arrested immediately. We'll issue a warrant right now, the detective assured him, and Ms. Oliveira will be released without any charges, of course. Minutes later, Louisa walked out of the interrogation room, still pale and visibly shaken. Upon seeing Ricardo, her eyes filled with tears of relief. It's all over now, he said, hugging her without caring about the curious looks from the officers. We have the proof. Veronica was filmed planting the earrings in your room. Louisa trembled in his arms. I was so scared. I thought no one would believe me. I would always believe you, Ricardo replied, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. Always. Something passed between them in that moment, a silent understanding, a recognition of feelings they had both been trying to ignore. The moment was interrupted by Detective Miller. Mr. Warren, we've just located Ms. Veronica Slade. She's being brought to the station now. Good, Ricardo replied, his voice hardening. I want to press formal charges for every possible crime. Ricardo. Louisa touched his arm gently. Sophia must be terrified. Maybe we should go back to her first. The mention of his daughter immediately softened Ricardo's expression. You're right. Marcus can handle the legal details here. He turned to his lawyer. I want Veronica to understand the exact gravity of what she's done. Leave it to me, Marcus assured him with a confident smile. Breaking and entering, filing a false report, defamation. She's not getting out of this easily. On the way back home, in the back seat of the Mercedes, Louisa remained silent, looking out the window. Ricardo respected her space, understanding that she needed to process the morning's trauma. And I'm so sorry for all this, he said finally, as they were almost there. Veronica was always intense, but I never imagined she would go this far. Louisa turned to him, her eyes reflecting a wisdom beyond her years. People driven by hatred are capable of terrible things, but what scares me more is thinking about what could have happened if there were no cameras, if you hadn't believed in me. That would never happen, Ricardo assured her, taking her hand in his. I know your character, Louisa. I know who you are. Do you? she smiled sadly. "We've known each other for such a short time. Sometimes it doesn't take long to recognize the truth in someone." When they arrived at the mansion, Sophia ran outside before the car had even fully stopped, throwing herself into Louisa's arms as soon as she stepped out of the vehicle. "Lou, you're back! I knew Daddy would bring you back." The little girl was crying and laughing at the same time, clinging to Louisa's waist as if she feared she might disappear again. "I'm here, Princess." Louisa hugged her tightly, her own tears finally falling freely. "And I'm not going anywhere." Ricardo watched the scene with a full heart. How could he have been so blind for so long? How had he not realized that what Sophia needed most, what he himself needed, was right here, in the form of this extraordinary young woman who had entered their lives by chance? That night, after Sophia had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by the day's emotional turmoil, Ricardo found Louisa on the back porch, contemplating the moonlit garden. "She's finally asleep," he commented, joining her on the wooden bench. "She made me promise about 10 times that you'd be here when she woke up." Louisa smiled. "I promised her too. Several times." They sat in silence for a few moments, the night air filled with the fragrance of the garden and unspoken words. "I got a call from the detective," Ricardo said finally. "Veronica's been arrested. In addition to the crimes against you, they discovered she's involved in fraud related to charity events. Apparently, she was skimming donations." "I'm sorry," Louisa murmured. "I know that, despite everything. You must have felt something for her once." Ricardo reflected for a moment. "I don't think I ever really knew her. After Beatrice died, I was lost. Veronica appeared at the right time. She was beautiful, sociable, seemed to fit into my world. But there was never a real connection." He looked directly at Louisa. "Not like what I feel when I'm with you." Louisa's heart raced. "Ricardo, You don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "And I know it's complicated. I'm your employer, there's Sophia to consider, and everything happened so fast. I just wanted you to know that what I feel is real, and I'm willing to wait for as long as it takes." Louisa looked at him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. Slowly, as if testing unknown waters, she reached out and touched his face. "I feel something too," she admitted in a whisper. "Something I've never felt before, and it scares me. Because it feels too big, too important to risk messing up." Ricardo covered her hand with his. "Then we won't rush anything. We'll let it grow naturally, at its own pace." In that moment, under the starry sky, they sealed a silent promise of patience, of respect, of possibilities. What neither of them knew was that, even behind bars, Veronica had not given up on her revenge. In her cell, she was visited by her lawyer, a man of questionable morals, willing to do anything for money. "I want you to find out everything about this girl's past," Veronica instructed, her eyes glinting with malice. "Everyone has secrets, and when I find hers, Ricardo Warren will understand that no one humiliates me and gets away with it." The lawyer smirked, taking notes. "I already have some contacts looking into it. It seems our young Louisa has a more interesting past than she lets on." Veronica smiled, savoring her revenge in advance. "Excellent. Their little fairy tale story is about to get a very different ending." Meanwhile, at the Warren mansion, oblivious to the gathering storm, Ricardo and Louisa went inside together to check on Sophia one last time before retiring for the night. The little girl slept peacefully, a slight smile on her lips, as if she knew that, finally, she was truly safe and loved. 2 weeks had passed since the incident with Veronica. Life at the Warren mansion had found a new rhythm, a harmony that made the house feel more alive than ever. Sophia blossomed under Louisa's care, her school performance improving visibly, her once withdrawn personality giving way to a talkative and confident child. Ricardo, for his part, had completely reorganized his professional life. He delegated more responsibilities to his directors, and cut back travel to the bare minimum and established a sacred family dinner time. To the surprise of his partners, the firm didn't suffer from these changes. On the contrary, his new perspective brought fresh ideas and renewed energy to the business. As for Luisa and Ricardo, they kept their promise of patience. There were glances, subtle touches, late-night talks on the porch after Sophia was asleep, but nothing more. They both knew that what was growing between them was too precious to be rushed. On a sunny Saturday morning, the three of them were having a picnic in the mansion's garden. Sophia ran after butterflies while Ricardo and Luisa set up the checkered blanket with fruit, sandwiches and juice. "She looks like a different child," Ricardo commented, watching his daughter with a smile. "I never thought I'd see her this happy again after Beatrice passed." Luisa smiled, arranging the colorful cups. "Children are resilient. They just need to feel safe and loved. And you brought that back to our home." Ricardo took her hand discreetly. "To both of us." The moment was interrupted by Ricardo's cell phone. He frowned, seeing the name on the screen. "It's Marcus, my lawyer. Strange for him to call on a Saturday." Ricardo's expression changed as he listened to what Marcus was saying. Luisa watched, concerned. As his face went from surprise to worry, and then to something close to anger. "I understand. Yes, I'll handle it. Thanks for the heads up." He hung up, his gaze meeting Luisa's with an intensity that made her shiver. "Did something happen?" Ricardo hesitated, clearly choosing his words. "Veronica, she's making some moves. Marcus found out she hired a private investigator to dig into your past." Luisa turned visibly pale. "My past? Apparently. She's determined to find something she can use against you." Ricardo moved closer, concerned by her reaction. "Luisa, is there something I should know? Something she could find and twist?" Luisa looked away, her hands trembling slightly. I don't know." "Hey," Ricardo touched her chin gently, making her look at him. "Whatever it is, you can tell me. I trust you." Luisa took a deep breath, her eyes welling up. "There is something that happened when I was 17 at the orphanage." Before she could continue, Sophia came running toward them, holding something in her hands. "Look, Lou, look, Daddy, I caught a ladybug." Luisa forced a smile, discreetly wiping away a tear. "How beautiful, Princess. But remember what we talked about with the garden creatures? That they need to be free to be happy," Sophia recited, opening her hands to let the insect fly away. "Bye-bye, ladybug. Come visit again." Ricardo exchanged a meaningful look with Luisa. That conversation would have to wait. Later that night, after putting Sophia to bed, Luisa found Ricardo in his office. He was sitting behind the imposing desk, but his expression was not that of a powerful CEO. It was that of a man worried about someone he cared for. "Can we talk now?" she asked, gently closing the door behind her. Ricardo nodded, gesturing to the armchair in front of him. Marcus called again. "Veronica is spreading rumors in social circles, implying you have a criminal past that I'm covering up." Luisa closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her courage. "It's not like that, but there is something I need to tell you, something very few people know." She took a deep breath before continuing. "When I was 17, still at the orphanage, there was a fire, a bad fire that destroyed part of the building." Ricardo nodded, encouraging her to go on. "I was accused of starting it," her voice faltered. "They said I was smoking secretly in the supply closet." "Were you?" Ricardo asked softly, without judgment. "No," Luisa replied vehemently. "I've never smoked in my life, but there was a staff member, a Mrs. Martyr, who hated me. I had reported her for mistreating the younger children, and she swore she'd get revenge." Tears began to stream down her face. "She framed me. She planted a lighter in my room, convinced other kids to testify against me." Ricardo stood up, rounding the desk to kneel beside her. "What happened then?" "Since I was a minor and there was no conclusive evidence, the case was dismissed, but the suspicion remained. That's why I had to move to a new city when I left the orphanage. No one would hire the girl from the fire." She wiped her tears. "My grandmother was the only one who believed me, who took me in. When she got sick, I had to drop out of college to take care of her." Ricardo held her hands. "I believe you, Louisa, completely. But what if Veronica finds out? She'll twist everything. She'll make it seem like I'm a criminal, that I'm a danger to Sophia." "I won't let her." Ricardo's voice was firm. "We will face this together, and if she tries to use this against you, she'll be committing slander. I have the best lawyers in the country. Remember." Louisa looked at him with gratitude, but there was still fear in her eyes. "I'm so afraid of losing all of this, of losing Sophia, of losing you." It was the first time either of them had verbalized what was growing between them. Ricardo touched her face tenderly. "You won't lose me, or Sophia, I promise." In that moment, something shifted. The last barrier fell. Ricardo leaned in slowly, giving Louisa time to pull back if she wanted. She didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft and hesitant at first, then deepened, full of promises and possibilities. When they parted, they were both smiling, despite the tears in Louisa's eyes. "We'll face this together," Ricardo repeated. "And when it's all over, when Veronica finally understands she can't touch us, we'll build something new, something of our own." What they didn't know was that, at that exact moment, Veronica's plan was being put into action. In her luxurious apartment, out on bail, she received the private investigator with a triumphant smile. "So you found something useful," she concluded, flipping through the file he had brought. "Better than we'd hoped," the man replied. "The girl was accused of starting a fire that nearly killed 5 children. And there's more. I managed to locate this Mrs. Marta, the staff member who accused her. For a reasonable fee, she's willing to give a new statement, with even more incriminating details." Veronica laughed, a cold, calculating sound. "Perfect. Now, we just need to make sure this information reaches the right people." She picked up her phone. "Starting with Child Protective Services. After all, what kind of father would let an arsonist take care of his young daughter?" The investigator hesitated. "You know this could be considered libel, right? If there's no concrete proof, leave that to me." Veronica waved off the concern. "When I'm done, this girl's reputation will be so destroyed that not even Ricardo with all his money will be able to save her." At the Warren mansion, oblivious to the approaching storm, Ricardo and Louisa sealed their promise with another kiss, while Sophia slept peacefully upstairs, dreaming of ladybugs and butterflies. Monday arrived with a deceptive normalcy. Ricardo left early for an important meeting, promising to be back for lunch. Louisa and Sophia followed their morning routine, breakfast, reviewing homework, and then some reading in the garden, enjoying the mild sun. It was shortly after 10 in the morning when the doorbell rang. Carmen answered and returned with a worried expression. "Mrs. Louisa, there are 2 people from Child Protective Services here. They want to speak with Mr. Warren about Sophia." Louisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Ricardo isn't here, but he should be back soon. Can I help them?" In the living room, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression and a younger man carrying a folder were waiting. The woman introduced herself as Dr. Helen Vance, a caseworker, and her assistant, Mr. Peters. "Actually, Miss," Helen consulted her notes, "Oliveira, is it?" "It's you we've come to speak with." Louisa's stomach sank. "About me. We've received a serious report concerning your past and your suitability to care for a minor." Helen adjusted her glasses. "It states that you have a history of dangerous behavior, including an incident with fire that put several children at risk." The words hit Louisa like a punch. "Veronica, it had to be." "That happened over 10 years ago," Louisa replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "And I was never formally charged because there was no proof, because I was innocent." "I see," Helen said, her tone making it clear she didn't really believe her. "However, We are obligated to investigate any potential risk to a child's welfare. We will need to speak with Sophia alone. She's at school, Louisa lied quickly. In truth, Sophia was in the backyard with Carmen, but a protective instinct made her hide the fact, and her father isn't present. I can't authorize an interview without his consent. Helen's eyes narrowed. Miss Oliveira, obstructing a CPS investigation is a serious offense. I'm not obstructing anything, Louisa replied, gathering her courage. I'm following the instructions of Sophia's legal guardian. If you want to speak with her, you'll need permission from Ricardo Warren or a court order. The assistant, Mr. Peters, exchanged a look with Helen. She's right about procedure, Doctor. Vance? Helen did not look pleased, but she nodded stiffly. Very well, we will return when Mr. Warren is present. But I must warn you, Miss Oliveira, this situation is severe. We have witness statements about the fire incident that are disturbing. After they left, Louisa ran to the phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial. Ricardo answered on the second ring. Louisa, is something wrong? Child Protective Services was here. Her voice faltered. About the fire, Ricardo. They know. Veronica told them. There was a moment of tense silence. I'm on my way back now. Don't let anyone speak with Sophia until I get there. 30 minutes later, Ricardo burst through the front door like a storm, his face a mask of controlled determination. He found Louisa in the living room, pale and visibly shaken. But tell me exactly what happened, he said, sitting beside her and holding her hands. Louisa recounted the visit, the accusations, the mention of disturbing statements. By the time she finished, Ricardo was already on the phone with Marcus. I want a restraining order against Veronica Slade immediately. She's using CPS to harass Louisa. He paused, listening. Yes, it's about that old incident. No, there's no conviction, not even a formal charge. Exactly. It's harassment and slander. After hanging up, Ricardo turned to Louisa. Marcus is on it, and I'm going to hire an investigator to find out who is feeding these supposed statements to Veronica. What if they take Sophia? Louisa's voice was just a whisper. What if they decide I'm not fit to be around her? Ricardo held her face in his hands. That is not going to happen, I promise you. That afternoon, while Sophia was napping, Ricardo and Louisa met with Marcus in the office. The lawyer brought worrying news. Veronica isn't acting alone, he explained, spreading some documents on the desk. She found that Mrs. Marta, the orphanage employee who originally accused Louisa, the woman has given a new statement, much more detailed and incriminating. Louisa felt her blood run cold. What is she saying now? Marcus hesitated, looking at Ricardo, who nodded for him to continue. She alleges that you not only started the fire, but that you did it deliberately to get revenge on other children who were teasing you. She says you had an unhealthy fascination with fire and had been caught in smaller incidents before. That's a lie, Louisa exclaimed, tears of indignation welling in her eyes. I would never, ever do something like that. We know, Ricardo assured her, holding her hand firmly. But we need to prove it. How? Louisa asked, desperate. It was so long ago. Any evidence that could prove my innocence is probably gone. Marcus smiled for the first time since he had arrived. Actually, it might not be. I've been doing some digging on my own since Ricardo told me about your past. The Morning Star orphanage underwent a complete renovation 5 years ago, including the digitization of all their old files. Louisa's eyes widened. All the files, including incident reports, original statements, and... Marcus paused dramatically. Security footage. There were cameras. Louisa looked shocked. I never knew. Only in a few common areas from what I've found. But if we're lucky, there might be something that can corroborate your version of events. Ricardo stood up, determined. I want you to use every necessary resource. Marcus, hire whoever you need. We need that footage and any document that can help Louisa. I'm already one step ahead, the lawyer replied. I have a team on their way to the Central Archive where the digitized records are stored, and I've filed for an emergency access request for the footage if it still exists. When Marcus left, Ricardo found Louisa on the porch, her gaze lost on the horizon. He approached silently, placing a jacket over her shoulders. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. "What if it's not?" Louisa turned to him, her eyes red from crying. "What if they don't find anything to prove my innocence? Will you start to doubt me too?" Ricardo pulled her into his arms. "Never! I know you, Louisa. I know your heart. I don't need proof to know who you really are." Just then, Sophia appeared at the porch door, sleepily rubbing her eyes after her nap. Seeing Louisa crying in her father's arms, the little girl ran to them. "Lou, why are you crying? Did someone do something mean to you?" Louisa knelt, forcing a smile as she wiped her tears. "No, princess. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they have a lot of feelings all at once. That's all." Sophia wrapped her small arms around her. "Don't cry, Lou. Me and Daddy will take care of you, just like you take care of us." The child's innocent words were like a balm to Louisa's wounded heart. She hugged Sophia tightly, looking over the girl's head at Ricardo, who watched them with watery eyes. What none of them knew was that, at that exact moment, the team hired by Marcus had found something in the orphanage's archives, something that would change the entire course of the story. The next morning brought a twist no one could have predicted. Ricardo was in his home office, reviewing some contracts, when Marcus called, his voice filled with a restrained excitement. "We found it, Ricardo, and it's so much better than we expected." Ricardo felt his heart race. "What exactly?" The security footage from the day of the fire still existed in the digitized archives, and it clearly shows Mrs. Marta entering the supply closet minutes before the fire started. Louisa is nowhere near that area in the footage. "My God!" Ricardo closed his eyes, a wave of relief washing over him. "Oh, but it means we have concrete proof that Louisa was framed," Marcus completed. "But there's more. We also found internal reports that were never included in the official investigation. Several staff members had reported Mrs. Marta for inappropriate behavior, including specific threats against Louisa after she reported the abuse of other children. Why did these reports never surface? The orphanage director at the time was Mrs. Marta's cousin. Apparently, he suppressed the evidence to protect her, but now we have everything, the footage, the reports, even statements from other former employees who suspected her. Ricardo could barely contain his emotion. "I want copies of everything immediately, and I want you to prepare a lawsuit against Mrs. Marta and Veronica for slander, perjury, and harassment. Already on it. And Ricardo, there's one more thing you should know." "What?" Mrs. Marta confessed. "When our team confronted her with the evidence, she broke down. She admitted she started the fire accidentally while smoking in the closet, and then framed Louisa for revenge. We have the confession on tape." Ricardo felt a mixture of anger and vindication. "I want that woman arrested, Marcus, and I want Veronica away from my family forever." "Consider it done. I'm on my way with all the documents." Ricardo hung up and rushed to find Louisa, who was in Sophia's room helping the girl with a school art project. Seeing his expression, Louisa froze, fearing bad news. "What happened?" "Sophia, princess." Ricardo knelt beside his daughter. "Can you take a little break from your project? I need to talk to Lou about something very important." Sophia looked from one to the other, sensing the tension in the air. "Is it good news or bad news?" Ricardo smiled, his eyes shining. "It's very good news." In the office, Ricardo told Louisa everything: the footage, the suppressed reports, Mrs. Marta's confession. With each revelation, her face transformed, moving from disbelief to relief, and finally to an emotion so profound that words couldn't express it. "It's over, Louisa," Ricardo said, holding her hands. "After all these years, you finally have proof of your innocence." Louisa covered her face with her hands, sobbing. They were tears of liberation, of a weight finally being lifted after carrying it for so long. "I can hardly believe it," she whispered through her sobs. "All these years, always afraid someone would find out, always feeling guilty for something I didn't do." Ricardo pulled her into his arms, letting her cry against his chest. "Never again, my love. You will never carry that burden again." It was the first time he had called her that. My love. And the words felt so natural, so right. When Marcus arrived with the documents, the three of them spent hours reviewing everything. The grainy security footage clearly showed Mrs. Marta furtively entering the closet, looking around to make sure no one saw her, and then rushing out minutes before the first smoke appeared. "What happens now?" Louisa asked. "Still processing it all. Now," Marcus replied, "we go to Child Protective Services with this evidence. Then we file a formal complaint against Mrs. Marta for perjury and against Veronica for slander and harassment. I want my name completely cleared," Louisa said with a firmness that surprised even herself. "Not just for me, but for Sophia. I want her to grow up knowing that the truth always wins, even if it takes time." That afternoon, Ricardo, Louisa, and Marcus met with Dr. Helen Vance from CPS. The woman's expression changed visibly as she examined the evidence presented. "This is extraordinary," she admitted, watching the taped confession of Mrs. Marta. "Miss Oliveira, I owe you a formal apology. It is clear we were misled by false information." "We accept your apology," Ricardo replied firmly. "But we hope that CPS will be more cautious in the future before accepting reports without properly verifying the facts." "Absolutely," Helen assured them, visibly embarrassed. "I will personally ensure this entire case is dismissed and that no mark is left on Miss Oliveira's record." As they left the building, Louisa took a deep breath, as if she could finally fill her lungs completely after all these years. "I feel like I've been born again," she confessed. "Looking up at the blue sky, like I can finally be who I really am, without fear." Ricardo smiled, lacing his fingers through hers. "And who are you really?" "Louisa Oliveira." She looked at him, her eyes shining with a newfound confidence. "Someone who is no longer afraid of the past. Someone who is ready to build a future." That night, after Sophia was asleep, Ricardo found Louisa on the porch, the place that had become theirs. He brought 2 glasses of wine and a mysterious smile. "To celebrate," he explained, handing her a glass. "We have a lot to celebrate," Louisa agreed, accepting the drink. Ricardo sat beside her, his eyes never leaving hers. "I got another call from Marcus tonight. Veronica has been arrested again, this time without bail. In addition to the previous charges, she now faces charges of bribery and witness tampering. She actually paid Mrs. Marta to lie." "Apparently so. And it wasn't the first time she's used tactics like that. Marcus uncovered a similar pattern of behavior in her past." Louisa shook her head sadly. "So much hate, so much bitterness. For what? Some people just don't know how to love, Louisa. They only know how to possess." Ricardo set his glass aside and took her hands. "But I know how to love, and I love you." Louisa's heart stopped for a beat. It wasn't the first time feelings had been expressed between them, but it was the first direct, unambiguous declaration. "Ricardo, You don't have to say anything right now," he smiled. "I just wanted you to know. These past few months with you and Sophia have been the happiest I've had in years. You brought light back into our lives." Louisa set her glass next to his and touched Ricardo's face softly. "I love you too. I think I have since that first night. When you found me singing to Sophia." They kissed under the starry sky, a kiss that sealed not only their love, but also the end of a painful chapter and the beginning of something new and bright. 2 weeks later, the Warren mansion was decorated for a small celebration. Sophia ran around excitedly, wearing her favorite dress and a flower crown Louisa had made especially for the occasion. Is it almost time? The little girl asked for the 10th time, peeking through the window. Ricardo laughed, adjusting his tie. Almost, princess. The guest should be here in half an hour. Where's Lou? She needs to get ready. I'm here, Louisa replied, entering the room. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her curly hair flowing freely, framing her radiant face. What do you think? You're beautiful, Sophia exclaimed, running to hug her. Stunning, Ricardo agreed, his eyes conveying much more than his words. The celebration that night was twofold: Sophia's 7th birthday and the official announcement of Ricardo and Luisa's engagement. Only close friends and family had been invited, people who truly cared about them. As he watched Luisa help Sophia adjust her flower crown, Ricardo felt a deep gratitude for the fate that had brought this extraordinary young woman into their lives. What had begun as a simple moment, a cleaner singing to a lonely child, had blossomed into the most beautiful love story he could ever imagine. And the best part, it was only the beginning. Sophia's birthday party was an absolute success. The mansion, decorated with colorful balloons and fairy lights, a theme chosen by the birthday girl, was filled with laughter and music. Children ran through the garden in games organized by Luisa, while the adults chatted animatedly, many of them meeting for the first time the woman who had captured the heart of the reserved Ricardo Warren. "I've never seen Ricardo so happy," commented Charles, his oldest business partner, watching his friend smile as he helped Sophia serve cake to the guests. "It's like he's come back to life." "Luisa has that effect on people," replied Anna, Ricardo's sister, who had flown in from Europe especially for the occasion. "She brought my brother back. And look at Sophia. I've never seen her so radiant." Indeed, the transformation in Sophia was perhaps the most remarkable. The shy, withdrawn girl had become a confident and cheerful child, always ready to share stories and include others in her games. Her teacher, present at the party, had commented on the impressive improvement in her school performance and social skills over the past few months. When the time came for the official announcement, Ricardo asked for everyone's attention, holding Luisa's hand on one side and Sophia's on the other. "I want to thank all of you for being here on this very special night," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "We're celebrating not only the 7th birthday of this wonderful princess," he smiled at Sophia, "but also a new beginning for our family." Luisa squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. "Many of you know my story. After I lost Beatrice, I thought I would never find true love again. I threw myself into work. I even distanced myself from Sophia." His voice faltered slightly. "It was the biggest mistake of my life." Sophia hugged her father's waist, looking up at him with adoration. "But then," Ricardo continued, recovering, "fate brought Luisa into our lives. And she did something I thought was impossible. She brought light back into this house, into Sophia's heart, and into mine." He turned to Luisa, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "That's why, in front of everyone we love, I want to make official what we already know in our hearts." Ricardo took a small velvet box from his pocket. "Luisa Oliveira, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife and officially Sophia's mother?" There was a collective gasp as he opened the box, revealing a single, elegant, and delicate solitaire diamond ring, just like Luisa. "Yes," she replied, tears of happiness streaming down her face. 1,000 times, yes. As Ricardo placed the ring on her finger, Sophia jumped for joy. "Now, Lou is going to be my real mom." The guests applauded emotionally as the new family embraced. It was a perfect moment, the kind that stays etched in memory forever. Later that night, after the guests had left and Sophia was finally asleep, exhausted but happy, Ricardo and Luisa walked hand in hand through the garden, lit only by the moon and a few decorative lanterns left over from the party. "Happy?" he asked, watching the ring sparkle softly on her finger. "More than I ever imagined possible," Louisa replied, resting her head on his shoulder. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find out this was all just a dream. Ricardo stopped, turning to face her. It's not a dream. It's real. We're real. He touched her face tenderly. And what we've built together will last forever. Do you know what moves me the most? Louisa smiled, her eyes reflecting the stars. Seeing Sophia so happy. When I think of how I found her that first night, so lonely, so starved for affection. You saved her, Ricardo said simply. And me too. We saved each other, Louisa corrected. That's how families work. 3 months later, in an intimate ceremony on the beach, Ricardo and Louisa exchanged vows at sunset. Sophia, dressed in white like a little princess, was the flower girl, carrying the rings with an adorable seriousness. The most emotional moment of the ceremony, however, was not in the script. After Ricardo and Louisa exchanged their vows, Sophia asked to speak. With a surprising confidence for a 7-year-old, she stood between the bride and groom. But I want to make a promise, too, she announced, her clear voice reaching all the guests. I promise to be the best daughter in the world to you both. And I promise to never forget that Mommy Beatrice is watching over us from heaven and is very happy that Lou came to take care of us. There wasn't a dry eye on the beach when Sophia finished. Louisa knelt in the sand, hugging the girl with all the love that overflowed from her heart. I love you, my princess, she whispered, and I promise to be the best mother I can be for you every single day of my life. Ricardo joined the hug, completing the family circle. In that perfect moment, under the sky painted in pink and orange, the three of them knew they had found something rare and precious, a new beginning, a second chance, a love that had been born from the simplest and purest of connections, a lullaby on an ordinary night. 1 year later, the Warren family grew with the arrival of Beatrice, a baby girl with dark curls and curious eyes, named in honor of Sophia's first mother. Sophia, now 8, proudly took on her role as a big sister, telling stories to the baby every night, just as Louisa had done for her. As for Veronica, she was serving time for her crimes, too far away to disturb the happiness she had tried to destroy. Mrs. Marta also faced justice, finally admitting her guilt in the fire publicly and asking for Louisa's forgiveness. A forgiveness that, with time and much inner work, Louisa was able to grant, freeing herself completely from the shadows of the past. And Ricardo. He finally found the balance he had always sought. His company continued to thrive, but now he worked with a renewed purpose, not just to build buildings, but to build a legacy of love for his daughters. Every night, upon returning home, his heart filled with gratitude as he heard the laughter echoing through the halls of the mansion that had, at last, become a true home. Sometimes, when everyone was asleep, Ricardo would allow himself a moment of reflection on the porch. Looking at the stars, he would silently give thanks for the miracle that had transformed his life. The miracle that had begun on the night he came home early and found his daughter falling asleep to the sound of the cleaner's soft voice. Some love stories begin with grand, dramatic gestures. Theirs had begun with a simple lullaby, and that, Ricardo knew, was the most beautiful melody he had ever heard. So, what did you think of this story of love and redemption? Do you believe that small moments can completely change the course of our lives? What would you do in Ricardo's place upon discovering the truth about Louisa's past? Let me know in the comments.